Hey friends, Keith Ellison here to another edition of Affording Your Life. My name is Keith Ellison and I'm the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. Let me just remind everybody what Affording Your Life is all about. It's about working class economics. It's about the economy that you live in, your medicine, your wages, your housing, your ability to maneuver in this election, and how all this stuff impacts you and your family. You might have heard of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, or you might have heard about credit default swaps or something. But all this lingo, what does it all amount to? Well, that's what Affording Your Life is all about, helping you manage this economy, and that's what it's all about. So this week, we're doing something very new. Congressman Pramila Jayapal, PJ, my friend and former colleague, also a woman who moved to the United States from India and became a congresswoman. An amazing, amazing story. She has a podcast called The Power You Have. It's all about organizing. It's about bringing people together and finding and building on the power that you have. You might be thinking, I'm not a CEO, I'm not a congressperson, I'm not an AG. Do I have any power? She says, hell yeah, you do. And we're trying to figure out how to help you maximize it. So I want to make sure that listeners of Affording Your Life could hear this conversation as we talk about the latest updates on our lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security, what's happening on the ground in Minnesota, and so much more.
And here he is, my friend, former colleague, former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and now, of course, the Attorney General for Minnesota, Keith Ellison. Thank you so much, Keith, for joining us.
Great to be with you, Pramila.
It was so good to see you, to hear your incredibly powerful testimony in Minnesota last week. And, we were there on Friday. I've talked a lot about the hearing and the opening when I introduced you. But just give us the update. Since Friday, just in this last week, so much has happened, including the Department of Justice is investigating you and Mayor Fry and a bunch of other people. So tell us what's happening just in this last week even.
Well, so they sent a subpoena ducis tecum, which is just a legal term which says they demand some documents. But their little investigation is no different from what they're doing on Mark Kelly, Tish James, James Comey, Jerome Powell. If they don't like you, you're going to use the instrumentality of the government to get you. Of course, no matter what wrong or bad thing you've ever done, they'll pardon you for it if they think you're a friendly. You could move 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. That's fine. Juan Orlando Hernandez, he's on the Christmas list. Oh, and what about fraudsters of all kinds ripping off
all the big banks, anybody who donates to his campaign.
Yeah. Oh, if you overthrow the government, you're good.
You're fine. All those pardons.
And even if you get back in trouble, he might pardon you again.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly right. I mean, what's stunning to me, Keith, about this whole thing, and I've been working on immigration for a long time, as you know.
Yes, you have.
And we've done a lot of these hearings, and this one was definitely, incredibly powerful. And every day I'm seeing even more things that they are allowing to happen. Like we just got notice of a secret memo, ICE memo, that says that they can violate the constitutional rights of people and ram down the doors without a judicial warrant. Yeah. How are you tackling that in the state? I mean, tell us the impact on the residents, I guess, first of all. And then how are you as the Attorney General, what are the things that you've been doing to sort of take this on?
We're suing Operation Metro Surge. We're suing DHS for that. We're asking the court to give us relief because this Operation Metro Surge is a gross violation of the rights of people. There has been a massive, just routinized, policy-driven racial profiling. It has to be a policy. It's so consistent that if you're not a pale-skinned person, then you get an extra scrutiny, and it doesn't matter whether you're a 5-year-old kid. There was a story recently, 5-year-old kid coming home from school, ICE agents intercept him, and then have him knock on the door and then arrest his family when they answer it for
They
him.
used him for bait as a hostage, basically.
Bait. Yes, we did. And so, just disgusting stuff. There was a family that was driving home. They had dropped their kid off for basketball practice, and then they get hit with a chemical ammunition, and the baby stops breathing, needs CPR. We all know about the death of Renee Good, whose death is apparently not being investigated by the federal government. They do talk out of both sides of their mouths at their convenience. But Todd Blanche, who's number 2 at Justice, said, we're not investigating her case. And then you have over 10 AUSAs who quit because they were told to investigate her and her wife, not the death of Renee Good at the hands of Jonathan Ross. And as I say that, Pramila, I'm a prosecutor. I don't know if you ever prosecuted, but, you're just not allowed to say your own opinion about the guilt or innocence of a person. I mean, it's not right to do it. Everybody's presumed innocence, including Jonathan Ross. But we do believe his case that the death of Renee Good must be investigated.
That's right. And look, I mean, we weren't the first ones to classify this. Like, this is the point I make in Judiciary Committee all the time, where we have turned all of the hearings into referendums on what happened to Renee Good, the last 2 hearings that we had. And I make the point that it was Kristi Noem.
Yep.
And then Donald Trump, and then J.D. Vance, who came out and called Renee Good a domestic terrorist,
right,
instead of saying we need to get to the bottom of this, we need to investigate this. I mean, on the investigation or non-investigation of Jonathan Ross, is the federal government sharing any information with you about what happened?
No, they're not investigating it, and they won't let anybody else do that. Now, there is a word for that too.
Yeah.
Cover up.
Cover up. Well, I mean, this is what we see on everything, right? We just had Jack Smith in today to testify. They won't even let him release the second report that he has. So, and certainly Epstein is a big cover up. So we've seen that. I want you to explain, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I want you to explain to people whether ICE and Border Patrol have any authority to do to the U.S. citizens, and actually it depends on which amendment we're talking about here, but whether they have the right to harass, assault, detain, pull U.S. citizens out of cars, the kinds of things that we've been seeing. Tell our listeners what the law is here.
Yeah. So their role is narrowly defined as immigration law enforcement. Their focus is supposed to be people who are in some immigration status, which would allow them to take some form of enforcement action. They can deal with people who obstruct legally and actually obstruct their work.
And following safely behind an ICE patrol car.
That's not obstructing.
That's not obstructing. How about videotaping ICE agents? What about videotaping ICE agents? That's not obstructing, right?
Videotaping people, you can videotape them, you can monitor them, you can publicly criticize them, you can call them names. I don't recommend you call anybody a foul name, but it's not illegal. It's legally just, it's constitutionally permissible. And so the court made an excellent ruling. It's been stayed, but it has not, but it still well may be confirmed in law. That litigation dropped by the department, by the ACLU of Minnesota. Our lawsuit's coming up, but Judge Kate Menendez wrote a very carefully tailored, well-researched brief and order. And she says, look, the First Amendment applies to everybody, including ICE and Border Patrol. So people have their rights, and they should exert those rights. And we need to make sure that they continue to do that, or we're not going to be living in this won't be the same country that we grew up in before.
No, that's right. I think a lot of people don't even realize that Minnesota is a very different state, for example, than Illinois, in the sense that the vast majority of immigrants in Minnesota are actually U.S. citizens, legal permanent residents, right? It's a pretty small undocumented population. And one of the things I've been thinking about is if they are doing this to U.S. citizens, and that's on camera, and they don't apologize for any of it. Imagine what they are doing to undocumented immigrants or immigrants who are here on different kinds of visas behind closed doors in those ICE detention facilities, what I like to call ICE immigration jails, because that's really what they are. But I do think tell people about the population of Minnesota, because I do think that's kind of a different dynamic than what we've seen in California or Illinois.
Well, one thing to know is that when you talk about the Hmong population, who are people, they're from the hill, they're from Laos, they're from Thailand, they're from the hill country in China. These people all came here because after the United States pulled out of Vietnam, many of them fought on behalf of the United States and were left there and then brought to the United States when they began to literally suffer a genocide at the hands of people there. So they not only are they legally here, they have paid in blood to be here. And so that's important to know. Then the Somali community, also a refugee community, came here, and overwhelmingly Somalis are U.S. citizens or have some sort of permanent status, which entitles them to be comfortably here. And then a lot of people whose roots are Latin America or West Africa, same story. A lot of the folks whose roots are from Latin America been here for a long time. Many are citizens, active, involved in the community, so the population in Minnesota is not a population where we have a lot of undocumented people, and so that really speaks to the irony here, because you would think that if they're going to surge over 3,500 ICE agents and border agents into Minnesota, you would think, oh, we're just awash, right? Very, very untrue.
Very small population. This also made me think, our dear friend and colleague Ilhan Omar, who represents Minneapolis after you, was talking really powerfully the other day, and she and I were sharing this both as naturalized citizens, about this second tier of citizenship, right? Like, just because we looked, and you certainly, in the civil rights history of this country, certainly Black people in the United States know what that looks like as well. But what do you think the impact is on the people of Minnesota who are looking at this and suddenly realizing that if you look like me or Ilhan, or you, that you suddenly are not going to be accorded the same rights as everybody else?
Well, it's as you and I and Ilhan walk around within our own skin, we kind of figure we're just as good as anybody else.
Right.
And so it is shocking to know that in the eyes of the law, maybe some people don't think you deserve the same rights as everyone else. Let me just do a little quickie review. Look, if you go back to the 1790 Naturalization Act, the law said citizenship was to go to free white persons.
That's right.
Tying full membership in the society to whiteness by design.
That's right.
Later on, those things began to change, but then, this is the country of the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882. The Chinese Exclusion Act. But before that, you had the Indian Removal Act. And there we're talking about indigenous people to the United States who were taken away from their home in North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, and shipped out to Oklahoma as internally displaced people by force. So they weren't citizens, though they are here 20,000 years, you know? So think about that as a concept when it comes to immigration. Immigration being defined not necessarily as tied to the land or anything, but just who's within the power elite, who's
That's right.
regarded as included. 1924 Act created the national origins quota, overwhelmingly favored immigrants from Northern and Western Europe, sharply limited to people from Asia, Africa, Europe. There's a famous case by a man named Mr. Thind. Mr. Thind was from Northern India. He said he wanted to be a fully fleshed member of American society. He had fought in the U.S. military, and they told him, he said, "Look, I'm Aryan. I am an Aryan. I'm from Northern India. We're the Aryan. I'm Aryan." They said, "You might be Aryan, bro, but you looking kind of brown to me. You ain't white enough for us." And so he was excluded. And here's the thing, Pramila, skin color had real material benefits or detriments, right? And so, I could keep going on, and actually people should know that, Pramila Jayapal is an expert in immigration policy, but the thing is that there have been many cases in American history where your status was all tied on your race. Yeah. Are Armenians white? Well, some cases say no, some cases say yes. Yeah. Are Syrians white? Are Japanese people white? And we actually entertained in courts of law who's white. And if you are interested, you can go on a search engine and say, cases involved where the courts have construed whiteness in American society. It seems almost absurd, but it's something that we do in America and have done for quite a long time, and it hasn't really changed.
No, I think that's what you're pointing out, right? Is that we have a history of this, and this is part of that history. And I think that there was a sense of, citizenship being conferred as being, if you ever got it, right? Recognizing that the Statue of Liberty seems to point towards certain European countries, maybe, and not towards Africa or Latin America. But if you ever got it, there was at least an idea that once you're a U.S. citizen, and I've pointed this out, that you take an oath to the United States of America, right? You renounce all of your allegiance to any other country. So if Donald Trump suddenly decides he wants to denaturalize a bunch of Somalis, which he's been talking about, or he's been threatening that, what does that do to the mindset of people who have literally either fought in wars, like you talked about with the Hmong people, or or this is their home. This is where they were born. It's like they don't know anything else. What are you gonna do?
A very interesting thing happens to me almost on a regular basis. I'll meet some young Somali kid, and I will say something to them like "Maga ah," which means "What's your name?" or "Galap Wanaksan," or "Bada Show Wanaksan," which is how you doing, or "nice to meet you," or whatever. And they'll be like, "Huh? Oh yeah, I think that means what's my name, right?" I'm like, so these kids are
they don't know that language. Yeah, they're Americans. Yeah,
they're all American. You drop them in Mogadishu, they're like, "This is not my country. I don't know the language. I kind of know the culture some." But I mean, and I'm not making that observation because it's good or bad. I guess my point is these kids are all American. They play football where you throw the ball, not where you kick it. These kids are American in every way. And what Trump is saying is, no, you're not. No, you're not. Well, Trump's not the last word. We are. We claim that for ourselves. This is what your work as an organizer is really all about. Mobilizing people for power, including the power to determine their citizenship.
Well, and you're going to be on on our Resistance Lab training on Sunday with us, kicking it off. We're doing that one in honor of Renee Good. And, we've already got, I think, 1,200 people signed up for it. And we're looking forward to that. People can sign up at resistancelab.us. You're the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. And so I'm sure you're getting asked all the time, what rights do people have in Minnesota and across the country in these times? What should people remember as they get literally invaded or occupied by ICE and CBP?
Right. The main thing to understand about rights and a right is that it doesn't mean people won't trample those rights. What it means is that you have a remedy if they do. So you have a right to not be killed, and yet people commit murder, right? And so your rights do not somehow immunize you from bad things, but they give you a recourse if they do happen. And the existence of that recourse hopefully makes people respect your rights from the very beginning, because they should know that if you have a right to go about your business as a person of color or whatever, or a white person in Minnesota, no matter who you are, then we can drag you into court to vindicate our rights, and nobody likes being dragged into court. So they hopefully will respect your rights from the very beginning. Trump has decided not to respect people's rights, nobody's rights. And what the reason we're suing Trump and the reason we're going to be in court with Trump in a very short period of time is because he has trampled on our rights as a state, violated our equal sovereignty, which is a 10th Amendment provision. People should remember that the states predate the United States. When states entered into the United States, it was with certain understandings, which is that the states reserved rights unto themselves, authorities unto themselves, and prerogatives unto themselves. And one of those is to have our own court system and be able to hold anyone accountable who breaks our laws, including federal agents, right?
So can you, somebody asked me this the other day, and I realized I actually don't know the technical answer to it. Can you, as Attorney General, take to court any of these officers that have violated people's rights as a state, or does that have to be as an individual case of that individual?
So the Attorney General's office can only pursue a criminal case if the governor gives me the case, or if the county asks me to join them in the case. And we join counties in cases all the time. In fact, I'm happy to share with the public that, yeah, I'm honored to be working with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office regarding Renee Good's case. So that's how I get into a case. But let me just tell you, in general, there is no legal barrier to holding anyone accountable who breaks the laws of the state, including an ICE agent. There is no absolute immunity. When the vice president and Stephen Miller made the statement that there's absolute immunity,
they're just lying.
Yeah, it was a misstatement of the law. It's not what the law requires. Now, there is something in the Constitution called the Supremacy Clause. Now, what does that mean? When the federal government has jurisdiction over something, their law is supreme. So, if a state or a county were to charge a federal agent with a crime, which they can certainly do, then the officer can assert, wait a minute, I was doing my job and I was doing things that were necessary and proper in connection with my job. And if I can convince the court of that, then I can maybe get immunity. But what if, and I'm going to take a hypothetical example. What if I am a federal driver? I'm driving, and then somebody flips me the bird. And then I get out of my car and I drag the person out of the car and I punch him a few times and then drive off. Well, can I say I was just doing my job? Or can I say I have absolute immunity? No, it's not necessary and proper for you to engage in road rage, right? So the real question is the conduct necessary and proper? And that would be determined by the court. And so that's really the real issue. But there is no legal barrier to holding an official accountable. You may remember Ruby Ridge. There was a white supremacist in Idaho, and the federal government was trying to arrest and prosecute him, and one of the agents shot and killed his wife. And the state of Idaho ultimately didn't do the prosecution, but they certainly were cleared to do it. And there are other examples of this in history. So now what there is, and if folks are listening, are some pragmatic challenges. Like in Minnesota, you still need the investigative file. You still need shell casings. You need the gun. You need the car. You need to be able to investigate the case. At this point, we're not able to get cooperation from federal authorities on that. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to do the case.
It means it's harder. Yeah.
It's harder, and it means, and so like the pragmatic reality, somebody was saying to me the other day, well, all you got to do is play the tape. I've been a trial lawyer for many years. That is absolutely positively something that someone who knows nothing about trying cases.
Well, that's why you're the attorney general, and they're not.
Right. Right. But like you take the Floyd case where we prosecuted those officers who killed George Floyd. Well, let me tell you, the last thing we did is worry about the video.
Right.
So we got real live human witnesses to come forward and testify, and then we use the video to augment their testimony. We did not just walk in and push play and expect them. Local police, in my opinion, have to just come to grips with the idea that there are violations of Minnesota law being done by people who they did not expect to see that happening. That what's really in front of us is not a legal barrier, it's a cultural one. It's like, so wait a minute, I'm a police officer, I went to the academy. I know people make mistakes all the time, but I don't expect somebody to flagrantly break the law right in front of me. And so this is what everybody's starting to get their grip.
No, I saw
around.
the press conference of the law enforcement, local law enforcement officers, speaking out and saying they're profiling us. And I think, even like this threat of bringing in, troops, not just National Guard, but military, active duty military members. And you think about what that looks like if you have local law enforcement trying to keep the peace and facing off against military troops. It's really an unprecedented, almost unprecedented situation. I know that I only have you for one more question, and so I got to ask you, because you're an inspiration. You were an inspiration to me when I ran for Congress. You've continued,
and you to me, buddy.
And you've continued to be, and you know all about organizing. That's what I'm all about. And this podcast is called The Power You Have. And I started it because I wanted people to feel powerful, to recognize their power, and then to use their power. And so I want to ask you what people can do to make a difference. They're watching this, maybe experiencing it in their own home city, their own home state, and they're like, this is crazy. What can I do? I always give this as the last question to my guests. What can people do to make a difference?
Well, I just want to say, Pramila, after it's all said and done, the question is always, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Okay, all that happened. What are we going to do about it? And so, so what can we do? First, I think we got to make a commitment to do something about it.
That's right.
Then we have to make a commitment then we have to recognize that not everyone can do everything, but everyone can do something. Then we got to ask ourselves, what's my passion? Pramila's a congresswoman. She can introduce bills, speak on the House floor, hold committee hearings, those kind of things she can do. Keith, he's the attorney general. He can file and defend lawsuits. He can do those kind of things. What can I do? Well, one thing for sure you can do is you can support candidates who are about justice.
That's right.
You can do that. You can do that. You can help them with donations. You can knock doors for them. You can do both. What else can I do? Maybe if you're an artist, you can help build an aesthetic of justice, right? So I love to look at the paintings of Frida Kahlo, right? And the paintings of Diego Rivera. And there are others as well. And they speak to the dignity of work and things like that. What else can you do? Well, you could write a poem, you can do those things. You can do other things. Like, what about mutual aid? Now you're like, look, I can't protest and I'm not artistic, but I could maybe make a casserole and bring it to that immigrant family who I know is nervous about going outside nowadays. So that is something you can do. Mutual aid, you can shovel their snow, you can help them, you can take their kids to back and forth from school for them, you can give them rides. What else can you do? Well, I asked a question the other day about mental health professionals. And I'm not talking about just like psychiatrists or psychologists. I'm also talking about everybody from a school counselor to a member of the clergy. Trump is injecting a paralyzing fear into American society. How can we, as those of us who are mental health professionals, help the rest of us manage the anxiety that Trump is trying to induce so that we cannot act? I'm looking forward to some justice mental health professionals who can get on a call and say, look, we all know about one-on-one therapy. We all know about group therapy, but what about social therapy? You know, and how can we help people, you know, build a greater level of confidence, sleep better? How can we deal with that? So, I mean, these are the things. It all starts with what's your passion? What can you do? What do you like to do? But get in and fit in. Do not do analysis and thereby become paralysis, right?
That's so good, Keith. And, you know, I think about my experience in Minnesota, both the interactions I had before coming to the hearing and then coming to the hearing and seeing the community, and everything that you mentioned was happening there. I mean, that's kind of the amazing thing is like the discipline from the people of Minnesota. In the face of violence, they were practicing Dr. King's nonviolent resistance. You know, they are standing up, taking risk to themselves. And all of that made a huge difference in Congress today. You know, we just had a vote on the spending bill for DHS, Department of Homeland Security, which includes ICE and CBP. And I'll tell you, it was remarkable. Usually, as you know, there's usually like a few dozen of us in the Progressive Caucus that are protesting all the money that's going to these military agencies like ICE and CBP. But this time, almost the entire Democratic caucus voted no. I think there were only 7 yes votes, which is remarkable. You know, it shouldn't be, but it's kind of remarkable. You know that. So I just want people to know that the people of Minnesota have inspired us. You inspire us. And I want people to see that they're doing something and not being paralyzed is so important. Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, has been my guest today on the podcast, and an incredible leader, champion, inspiration, and a dear friend. Keith, thank you for everything you're doing.
Love you, Pramila. Take care, my dear.
Love you too. All right, you take care.
So, hey, friends, thank you for tuning in to this special episode. Remember to rate, review, and share this show with your friends and your family, and maybe even some people you don't dig very much, but whatever. So anyway, take care, be well, and we'll see you next time.